This is a training session regarding the A-Systems Job View New Company Startup Wizard. Whenever you start up a company using A-Systems Job View, you can use this simple wizard to enter the data for your new company. The New Company Startup Wizard is accessed by selecting the Wizard menu item from the Setup menu. The following screen will appear. Let's proceed with a description of the screens in the New Company Startup Wizard. Click the Next button, and the following screen comes into view. At this point, you will be prompted to gather the materials you will need to complete the functions in the Startup Wizard. Do not ignore this message. If you have all these materials on hand as you proceed with the wizard, you will be able to have your company up and running in Job View in a very short time. Gather the required items and check off each item before proceeding to the next screen. Click the Next button and the following screen comes into view. Here is where you enter your company name, address, phone numbers, and tax identification numbers. Click Next and the following screen comes into view. Here you can enter your general ledger accounts and design your financial statement. If you chose to create this company using the Auto Create option, the preferred method, you will see a list of general ledger accounts already in the list box. These accounts all have 5-digit account numbers. If you chose to create a new company from scratch, you will notice that there are no general ledger accounts displayed in the list box. Also, you have the ability to specify the number of digits you wish to include in your general ledger account numbers. You may specify any number of digits, from 1 to 10. Please take care in determining the number of digits. A 5-digit GL account number is standard. To avoid lengthening data entry processes, it's probably a good idea to use 5 or fewer digits in your account number. Once you've created at least one general ledger account, the number of digits field becomes disabled and cannot be changed. To insert a new account, click on the Insert button. The following entry screen appears. Here you can enter the account number and the description of the new account. Specify whether the account will usually carry a debit or a credit balance, and indicate whether there is a special account type for this account. More help for this function is contained in the training session on entering GL accounts. After any account is entered, it should be inserted into the financial statement. In order to do this, select the Financial Statement Layout button. Here you can see all the line items that are currently set to appear on the financial statement. You may insert a new line item for your new account, or edit an existing master account line item and include your new account in the list of accounts to be totaled in this master. More help for this function is contained in the training session on designing financial statements. Click the Next button and the following screen comes into view. Now you have the opportunity of specifying which of your general ledger accounts will be used by Job View for specific counting purposes. If you selected to auto-create your company with a preset chart of accounts, these fields will already be filled in for you. If you selected to create your company from scratch, the fields will be empty and you will be required to fill them in. Please take care in assigning these default account numbers. They will be used by posting processes, and the transactions recorded to these accounts will be permanent. You may enter the same account number into multiple fields if you desire. Notice that some of the fields are preceded by an asterisk. Before continuing with the Startup Wizard, you must at the very least fill these highlighted fields with a valid general ledger account number. Click the Next button and the following screen comes into view. Here you can set up your system startup date. This is an important step and it should be done right the first time. From the information supplied in this step, the system creates more than a year's worth of fiscal periods. The 2 questions asked are very simple. Enter the month and year of your system startup date. This refers to the date that you wish JobView to begin providing financial information for your company. If you enter a date that is past, you will be required to enter and post all accounts payable, accounts receivable, payroll, and job costing information that's happened since this date in order to bring your books up to date. A-Systems recommends that you specify either the current month or 1 month in the future. Make sure you specify the correct last month of your fiscal year. For most companies, this is December, but your company may end the fiscal year in September or some other month. When we click on the Next button, the system will create fiscal periods according to the dates we entered. The Vendor Entry window now comes into view. Here you can insert all your vendors using an abbreviated vendor entry screen. Let's click on Insert and add one new vendor. This is the Wizard Vendor Entry window. We can enter the vendor name, address, phone, fax, and email address. A much more detailed vendor entry screen is available from the Accounts Payable menu. But this screen will greatly speed up the process of entering many vendors for startup purposes. After we've entered all our vendors, we click the Next button. The Customer Entry window now comes into view. Here you can insert all your customers using an abbreviated customer entry screen. Let's click on Insert and add one new customer. This is the Wizard Customer Entry window. Just as we did in vendor entry, we can enter the customer name, address, phone, fax, and email address. Again, a much more detailed customer entry screen is available from the Accounts Receivable menu, but this screen will greatly speed up the process of entering many customers for startup purposes. After we've entered all our customers, we click the Next button. The Employee Entry window now comes into view. Here you can insert all your employees using an abbreviated employee entry screen. Let's click on Insert and add one new employee. This is the Wizard Employee Entry window. Just as we did in vendor and customer entry, we can enter the employee name, address, phone, fax, and email address. We can also enter some information about the employee which will allow us to enter and process timesheets immediately after finishing with the Startup Wizard. This information includes birthday and hire date, gender and ethnicity, Social Security and driver's license numbers, marital status, tax withholding exemptions, and regular and overtime pay rates. Of course, a much more detailed employee entry window is available from the Payroll menu. But this screen will greatly speed up the process of entering many employees for startup purposes. After we've entered all our employees, we click the Next button. Now we can enter a dictionary of cost codes. If you created this company using the Auto Create option, a list of job cost codes will already appear in the list box. These cost codes are built on the standards set by the Construction Specifications Institute, or CSI. They are intended for use by general contractors and home builders, and include such groupings as general requirements, site work, concrete, masonry, and so on. You may use this list as is, modify it by adding or deleting codes or changing code names, or delete this list and create one of your own. If you do create your own list, remember that subtotaling on JobView job costing reports is tied to the structure of your cost code numbering system. For example, if you were a road building contractor, you could create a number of cost codes that fall under the category of road base. If all these cost codes are in the 4,000 range, they can be grouped together on your analysis reports with a subtotal for road base. If you selected to create a company from scratch, or if you elected to delete the entire list of cost codes and create your own, you will be allowed to specify the number of digits in the cost code number here. Once again, 5 digits is a standard length. However, you may specify any number of digits from 1 to 10 for your cost code length. Once you have created at least one cost code, the number of digits field becomes disabled and cannot be changed. Let's click on the Insert button to see where these cost codes are entered. As you can see, the system asks only for a code number and a description. A much more detailed cost code entry screen is available from the Job Costing main menu, but this screen will greatly speed up the process of entering many cost codes for startup purposes. After we've entered all our cost codes, we click the Next button. Now we can create job budgets using the cost code dictionary we entered on the previous screen. You will now be allowed to specify the number of digits in the job ID number here. Specify any number of digits from 1 to 10 for your job number length. Job numbers can contain both alphabetic and numeric characters. Once you've created at least one job, the number of digits field becomes disabled and cannot be changed. To enter a job, click on the Insert button. Here we can enter just a few key bits of information about the job. These include the job number and name, the job contract amount, the amount billed to date, and the amount received to date. A much more detailed job entry screen is available from the Job Costing menu. But this screen will greatly speed up the process of entering many jobs for startup purposes. On the right is a list of the cost code budgets we set up for this job. Remember, just a moment ago we entered a dictionary of cost codes. This is a list from which we can draw to create the budget line items on this job. When we click on the Add New Cost Code Budget button, this screen appears. Here we can pick our cost code from the dictionary list. Now we must assign a cost type. This we pick from the pull-down list, either labor, materials, subcontracts, equipment, general, or burden. We can now optionally supply a budget of how many units we will use. Units can be hours, square feet, pieces, and so on. We can also supply a dollar amount budget for this code. Finally, we can supply figures representing how many units we have used and how many dollars we have spent as of the system startup date entered earlier. Once our job budgets are complete, we can click on the Next button. Now we are able to enter our open accounts payable invoices into the system. Let me explain this in greater detail. One of the steps coming up later in the Startup Wizard process is the process of providing beginning balances for all your general ledger accounts as of the startup period. One of these accounts will be the Accounts Payable GL account. In order to start out properly, the balance you enter for that Accounts Payable account should be supported by open invoices in the Accounts Payable system. This is where we enter those open invoices, that is, invoices which have open balances as of the system startup date. To enter an invoice, click on the Insert button. Here you will see an invoice entry window. The process of entering invoices will not be explained here, but in a separate training session on entering and processing accounts payable invoices. Once you have entered all your invoices, click the Next button. The wizard will post your invoices and print posting reports for you to keep. And then the following screen will be displayed. Now we are able to enter our open accounts receivable invoices into the system. One of the account balances we will be supplying later will be the Accounts Receivable GL account. In order to start out properly, the balance you enter for that accounts receivable account should be supported by open invoices in the accounts receivable system. This is where you enter those invoices. That is, invoices which have open balances as of the system startup date. To enter an invoice, click on the Insert button. Here you will see an invoice entry window. The process of entering invoices will not be explained here, but in a separate training session on entering and processing accounts receivable invoices. Once you've entered all your invoices, click the Next button. The wizard will post your invoices and print posting reports for you to keep, and then the following screen will be displayed. Now you can enter your job costs as of the system startup date. Each of the cost code budgets we entered earlier will show up in this window. For every budget item, we can enter the dollar amount costs and the units used as of the startup date. This is done by highlighting a line item and clicking on the Change Cost to Date button. We can now change the figures right here in the list box. Now we click the Next button. The system will post the startup cost transactions and print posting reports for you to keep, and then the following screen will be displayed. This is the final step of the new company startup wizard. Here you can enter account balances of all your general ledger accounts as of the startup period. The best way to do this is to have an audited or at least trustworthy financial statement as of the startup period on hand. Simply go down the list of accounts and enter the desired account balance for each of the GL accounts in the list. Once you have finished your entries, the total at the bottom of the screen should be 0, representing the fact that you've entered an equal number of credits and debits. If the total is not 0, the system will not allow you to click on the Next button to finish the wizard. If the entries are in balance and we click on the Next button, the system will post the startup transactions and print posting reports for you to keep, and then the following screen will be displayed. This marks the completion of the startup wizard process. Once you've gone through the wizard and posted some entries, the wizard doesn't like to be disturbed. However, you may need to wake him up again to finish an unfinished wizard session. If this is the case, simply ignore the wizard warning on this screen and click Continue. The wizard will awaken and once again help you through the startup process. This concludes this training session on using the new company Startup Wizard.